theatre, film, TV and more. Suzy Wrong reviews it all on Joy Drive with Em and Warren.
Good afternoon, Suzy Wrong.
Good afternoon. So nice to be with you on a Tuesday afternoon.
It certainly is. And before we jump into what we, are going to talk about, I just need to say you have been, I don't even know how to describe how elegant, extravagant, stunning.
Iconic.
Iconic. Yes. You know what? That's the perfect word. Iconic. You have been doing something very iconic today. Can you tell us about it?
I have been standing atop 15-foot ladder this morning in the Royal Botanic Gardens in Sydney, wearing this amazing dress called the Amsterdam Rainbow Dress that's been traveling the world for the last 6 years. At the moment, the dress, humongous dress, is made of 71 flags of countries where it is illegal to be homosexual on punishment of imprisonment, torture, or death. It is a symbol of the continued threats against the community and the need to continue to push for progress. It is being presented as part of the leading up to Sydney World Pride next year. So I had the immense honor, I don't know what I did to deserve this honor, but I had the immense honor of putting on this dress and doing some amazing photographs that hopefully would be revealed tomorrow.
It looks stunning, Suzy. How did it feel, though? I mean, there's a significant message there, isn't there, with so many flags? How did it feel?
Part of this dress thing is that, as it moves around the world, every time the law changes in one of these countries, flag gets removed and gets replaced by a rainbow flag, right? So that's really, really meaningful. So hopefully one day this huge dress is completely made up of the rainbow pride flag. And at the moment, as you and I have discussed, Warren, just very recently about Singapore finally deciding to change their laws to make it no longer be a crime for men to have sex with other men. So it's a really interesting period. I hope I'm the last one to wear the dress that includes the Singapore flag, because they haven't really changed it yet, because they're still waiting for the laws to be formally changed. So when that happens, that flag will be replaced by the pride flag. So on that level, already is super meaningful to me. And, I was standing up there for like 2 hours and I was just looking at all these flags and feeling the weight of it. Obviously, it was, quite a few kilos hanging onto my shoulders. So it was the weight of it, figuratively and literally, that I could feel when I was wearing that dress.
Suzy, it will be a magical moment and hopefully something that you can experience when you can wear it again, and it will be all pride flags.
Yeah, they asked me if I could imagine it. I think I can imagine it being all pride, but I don't think I'll still be here.
Well, let's hope it happens sooner than we think. Now, Suzy, today we are talking about Heartbreak High, the reboot, which is on Netflix.
Anne-Marie and Harper are besties at Hartley High, a public school in Sydney. The Year 11 students have been creating a huge map on a wall in an abandoned stairwell, secretly documenting sexual escapades of everyone in school. Things are off to a dramatic start in Netflix's reboot of Heartbreak High when the secret sex map is discovered and intimate details are exposed for all and sundry. At the same time, Harper has suddenly turned hostile towards Anne-Marie, and we don't know why. The 8-part series commences in a slightly juvenile way, taking the required time to establish characters and space. We need to gain some realistic perspective of what these 17-year-olds are like, and not just Anne-Marie and Harper, but also their many schoolmates. By episode 3 of Heartbreak High, however, we take a big leap into significantly more mature territory. As the teenagers begin to couple up, we explore the challenges they face in personal and in their social realms, and it turns out their concerns are no different from us oldies. I found myself investing heavily in all of the characters. They're all endearing and relatable, including the amazing teacher Jojo and the principal Woodsy. The cast is exceptional. Each actor is unbelievably charismatic and persuasive, and they really make the show. The writing and direction aren't quite as groundbreaking or surprising as recent hits like Sex Education or Euphoria, but Heartbreak High is certainly no less entertaining. I would be completely heartbroken if it doesn't get renewed for further seasons. Em and Warren, the series covers a lot of ground, doesn't it?
Definitely.
It certainly does. I really enjoyed it. I thought that every episode, it was, I guess, quite heavy, especially for like high school situations. But the last 2 episodes especially, I found really quite like hard to watch, but they were well done. So you know, it made me feel things. So that's a good thing, right?
Yeah, you went to really real places.
Yeah.
And it certainly didn't start that way. When it starts, you think like, does this really happen? Do 17-year-olds really have that much sex? You know, I mean, I don't know. I'm much older than that. But at the start, it just all feels a bit fantastical. And then it just goes into really real things. Things that even I feel like I'm so much older than them. But I feel like, oh, those are things that feel really real to me.
I feel like in some ways it was a bit similar to Sex Education, wasn't it? But I feel like you're right. This is more real than what Sex Education is. And I loved, you know what I loved? The diversity of the cast. I thought that was fantastic. I thought the series was quite funny. You know, I love the head teacher. I think she is brilliant in it. I love the sluts class.
I think you best explain yourself.
No, you have to watch it.
It's an acronym. It's an acronym.
And you know, I love, and they call it the incest map on there. And I think, you know, because it does show that kids do have sex.
Yeah.
And, you know, we can pretend that they don't, but they do. And that just completely captured it. You know, and there were all different themes in there. I mean, we had non-binary character Darren. I loved Darren. He was probably my favourite character in the whole show. And also something else I really liked, and I guess being, you know, an older generation, is the music. The music covered several decades. So it doesn't matter how old you are watching, you know, essentially a high school drama, you feel like you're part of it. It's really good.
Yeah. I love that, you know, it sort of shows you what it would be like if you fell in love with someone who had autism, what it feels like when you fell in love with someone who might be asexual, you know, all the different possibilities, because we all know that when you fall in love with someone, it's wonderful for a couple of weeks and then you discover that something there that's going to be a bit challenging.
that horrible realization.
It's not all fairy tales all the time. So everyone's got things, baggage, and I love the way how real it got, and it wasn't afraid to get really heavy. And you know, Em, you're right. At the end, it was so heavy.
Yeah.
In contrast to the start, I was actually quite surprised, actually.
But it was cool. It kind of felt like the show developed as the people were developing. And speaking of favorite characters, I really loved Cash and Cash's, you know, personal development. Also his grandma, so amazing. Absolutely loved watching her just like defend him and be just, you know, I can't really explain other than just badass, like just a badass granny.
but isn't it great? You really see the difficulty of pulling away from that peer pressure of being in there with the wrong crowd.
Yeah. It is so authentic, you know, I think it really, it feels like they were really determined to create something really real.
Yeah.
And even if it went into places that were, you know, a little bit hard to watch, and, you know, and I think it probably was not as funny as they wanted it to be, because some of that stuff is just really hard to make funny. But as an audience member, you just really appreciate how it's so sort of thoroughly explored and sort of explored in a really frank way, that it wasn't sort of shying away or looking away because things got too hard.
My only qualm with the show in total, I think, was I did find that some people were a little bit overacting.
Oh.
I found I thought the kids were better actors than the adults, except for the head teacher.
Yeah, the head teacher was great. But yeah, did you think that, Suzy, or no?
You know, most of these are Sydney actors, and I know them from around the track too.
Don't say anything, Suzy. Your lips are sealed.
We won't be invited to Suzy's barbecue.
No, I don't think that. I loved all the actors. You know, I can tell you that I had a very strange maternal feeling come up. It's not something that's normal to me. But I'm watching these and I'm watching these. I'm like, oh yeah, these people are like 30 years younger than me. Of course, I feel, you know, a little bit maternal in that way, and watching them sort of trying to mature and the way they're growing up. And it was a really weird feeling. I've never had that before, but that's how I felt about a lot of these actors, a lot of these faces that I've known, in recent years, and see them in a really beautiful work. And, you know, and the writing is, you know, like, I think from a textual perspective, the writing, like I said earlier, is not something we've never seen before, but it just gives so much scope for the acting, like each of them are able to be so colorful and so unexpected and be so contradictory and just never be boring and flat. Just so impressed by that.
We are talking about Heartbreak High, the reboot, which is currently streaming on Netflix. Something else that I thought it did really well was it explored the relationship between the police and marginalized communities, and you could really see what was going on. And, I was cringing when I was watching that part.
Yeah, episode 4 was written by a great young Sydney Indigenous writer named Maine Wyatt. And there was a scene where, and it was interesting, that was the Mardi Gras episode, and, they had gone out as a group partying, and as they left the party spot, there was an altercation between the Indigenous boy and the cops, and I think it was just expressed so clearly and so powerfully. And I don't think it's something that we see a lot, do we? Like we unfortunately, as a society, we don't seem to care enough, and we don't really want to look at it so closely and hear about it, and it's great that they devoted quite a lot of space for this Indigenous character.
Something else, it was quite refreshing to see, and I'd be interested to see whether you both agree, that the experiences of teenagers doesn't really change, does it? Over the decades and the generations. Yes, we have technology changes, etc., and trends, but really we all have the same sort of themes happening during our teenage years.
Yeah, adolescence is hard. You just you're going into a space where seems to have its own rules and it seems to have its own order and things, but you don't know. And nobody wants to teach you because they want to keep you as a child. They're not going to tell you, oh, this is how you have sex, which is what they were trying to do in the sluts class. And it's interesting to see because we're thinking oh, actually you do have to teach them these things, because where else are they going to find out?
Exactly.
Absolutely. I think it's really interesting because it's a common experience, right? We've all been a teenager, and it did feel like, yeah, this is a lived experience that we can kind of all connect to. And even though society as a whole seems more accepting, you were still watching characters on their personal development journey going, even though I know my friends would not judge me, even though I know my friends will be so open and, allow me to be vulnerable in the way that I'm feeling and the way that I am growing into being me, they still had that confusing moment where it was like, I don't even know, even though they have more of a, such an interesting.
Yeah.
And still,
because even if it's not a social thing that's bothering you, being an adolescent, there's just so much stuff internally that you've got to sort out.
Yeah, exactly.
And the struggles of coming to terms with one's sexuality and trying to figure out,
exactly.
what is it? You could see that, and that hasn't changed.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I would argue that it might have become maybe more complicated, because back in our day, we are just worried about being gay or being straight, right? It just was this kind of binary thing. And now that things have opened up, and there's that scene with the unexpected threesome and things, and it becomes, if you're smashing out the binary, then I guess it becomes maybe even more complicated for young ones, in a world that is still used to people having sexual labels attached to themselves. And doesn't that mean then that you're making people take on the label at some stage? And that must be hard.
Absolutely. Well worth the watch. And thank you for bringing it to us, Suzy.
It is Heartbreak High on Netflix.
What are we going to watch next week?
Next week, we take a look at The Dream Life of Georgie Stone, a new documentary on Netflix about Neighbours star and trans advocate Georgie Stone. It's called The Dream Life of Georgie Stone on Netflix. The Dream Life of Georgie Stone. Thank you, Suzy. When will we see your dress? I expect the photos will be out tomorrow.
So go and follow Suzy Wrong now so you can see those photos tomorrow.
Thank you. See you next Tuesday.
See you, Suzy.
Joy Drive on Joy 94.9 FM in Melbourne, Joy on your digital radio, iHeartRadio, TuneIn.com or the Joy app. No matter where you are, you can always take Em and Warren with you.